Yeah, all good. All good. Yeah, just going for a nice peaceful walk this Arvo, and I was doing a bit of reflecting on type of conversations I've had with different coaches and people in the game of football over the years. And it's around professional football clubs in England. They've long been known for the active participation in global transfer market, often purchasing players from abroad. And it's not just unique to England, it happens in other leagues as well. Italy, Germany, France, Portugal even, and to name a few, where they go out and buy players from abroad. And Australia is driven by desire to secure top talent and expand the brand internationally and remain competitive in both domestic and obviously European competitions. Although what I would say, the approach has often been debated in the sense that there's a wealth of talent available, particularly in the lower leagues and even non-league, the non-league pyramid. There's loads of talent available, and I've often said for me is that sometimes you'll see, doesn't happen so much now, but if you go back a few years ago, it still happens now. You'll see players that are bought and they're on pretty big contracts. They buy a player from abroad, and they end up just being a squad player, if that really. And you probably say, okay, well they spent millions on the player from abroad, and I would say, in my opinion, there's players in lower league and even non-league that are equally as talented and wouldn't cost anywhere near that price. You could say to a player, for example, in non-league, you could say to a player, so if a premiership team wanted to look at a player from a non-league or a championship team and say, you know what, we'll give you a 6-month contract or a year contract. And you can make a case in point, okay, the player might have a good job and think, okay, well, I don't know if I'm going to gamble on the 6-month contract. You say, okay, well, even the club says, you know what, we'll triple what you get paid annually in the job you're in now. So if it doesn't work out, you've got something to sort of fall back on. That's sort of, just sort of saying as an example, just a few thoughts out there, type thing. But I think sometimes what happens is that the attraction to buy foreign talent, for example, it's sort of scouting. You've got these scouting networks abroad, and it's influenced by diverse skills. Sometimes you get players from abroad, they've got different styles of play. You might be looking for a certain type of player, an attacking player, a winger, or a certain type of defender or goalkeeper. So it gives you that sort of enhanced the dynamic skills and sort of tactics. The marketability, sometimes you think, okay, you buy a higher profile signing and it can boost commercial revenue for the club. So you buy a player, for example, I don't know, from Brazil, Japan, or wherever around the world, and you're selling more shirts and players from that country become interested. The immediate impact, sometimes you get sort of the finished article as well. But I think sometimes you do get non-league talent gets overlooked. And don't get me wrong, I think I'm all for bringing in players from abroad. I think they really enhance the league, and certainly the Premier League, you've got some of the best players in the world, and it makes it for a more marketable product. That has a big impact as well. I mean, obviously, if you've got the best of the best playing in the league, it's only going to be good for the younger players coming through. Absolutely. But where I think it falls short sometimes when they bring in players that are nowhere near, and you kind of think, well, there are players in non-league that could do equally as good a job. And I think sometimes it's the visibility. I would say that basically the non-league, unless they're involved in, for example, like a big FA Cup match, they don't really get that media attention. Also, there's fewer scouts that get out there. I mean, I'm speaking based on my own understanding and my own opinion. I think that, there probably aren't as many scouts that could go out to watch some of these non-league games. And we have seen, I've spoken about this before, that we have seen some really talented non-league players make it in league football. So you could argue that, are they going to be ready straight away? Well, I think if given the chance, if they're playing and training around players at that level, they're certainly going to improve. That's for sure. There is that pressure to perform. So sometimes, okay, it's like, do I want to take a chance? But when you think about, you take an opportunity, you give a non-league player a chance and see what happens. I suppose sometimes they might look for a proven track record. So the player they bring in might have been playing the highest league in a league abroad. And I think, okay, well, that's going to save us nurturing the talent we might get from non-league. But it doesn't always work out that way. We've seen plenty of players that have been brought in from different leagues, yeah, and they haven't sort of cut it, so to speak. You see players sometimes they get brought in and they don't cut it. They struggle, for example. So I think, for me, some of the key things to think about, yeah, absolutely, buy a player from abroad. It is a good strategy at times, and we see it, certainly in the English league and other leagues too, by the way. But I think it's important to look for untapped potential, because you think about it, you go into the non-league and you can get the balance of international recruitment and with investment in local talent, then the club can get a competitive edge. There's also obviously financial benefits. If you pick up a player from the non-league and say, I'll give you a 6-month contract, a year contract, and see how it goes, and you get the community benefit too. Obviously the community benefit, the investment for the non-league club, but also that community feel to bring in a player as well. And, there's plenty of players that have come from non-league and lower leagues to play at the highest level professionally, to make a case in point for it. It's a reminder, some of the players that have made it. And I would certainly encourage, for sure, clubs, if they aren't already doing so, to take a closer look around the non-league and the lower league, to check for sort of future players that can sort of make the grade at that highest level.